people are being killed, raped, and brutalized, and the property is being burned. But the whole world, actually, to my mind, is almost silent. They observe the destruction of Bengalis in East Pakistan, remaining totally silent.
Namaste and welcome to Chaitya Media and the Festival of Bharat. My name is Sharan Sethi and I'm your host. This year in 2021, India and Bangladesh in specific, is commemorating its 50th year of independence from Pakistan. And India did have a huge role to play, and it impacted our geopolitics forever from then. And to discuss this, we have Air Chief Marshal Arup Rahaji with us today. Sir, first of all, it's such an honor to have you here on our platform. And before we begin, let me take 2 minutes to humbly convey my pranams to you for all the seva and sacrifice that you've done for the country. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So first of all, you were a very young cadet at that time in 1971. So, from that perspective, how did you observe the entire incident that was very important in our history?
Okay, Sharan, let me go in a particular sequence so that in terms of chronology, events, etc., it falls into place and becomes more logical. So let me tell you that this year, as you mentioned, India as well as Bangladesh both are celebrating the 50th anniversary year. We call it the Swarnim Vijay Varsh, and of course people of Bangladesh are celebrating as the Golden Jubilee year or Vijay Diwas of 50th year full. So both the nations, both the governments, peoples from both countries actually trying to celebrate the occasion because it was a big victory. And the birth of Bangladesh took place on 16 December 1971. So 16 December is a very important, it's a red letter day for both the nations, especially for Bangladesh. So that is the first thing. And this Swarnim Vijay Divas or Golden Jubilee year celebration, is going to end on the 16th of December this year. 50th year fell last year, 16 December. So for the whole year, Indian government and the Bangladeshi government and the people are celebrating it. So Indian government actually started with last year, 16 December, where the Prime Minister lit 4, torches at the, Jawan Jyoti in Delhi. And these 4 torches have been taken all across the country for a specific, very specific purpose, which I'll cover. And now on the 16th of December this year, it will reach back at Delhi at the Amar Jawan Jyoti, and where the function will be held to culminate the entire celebration. So one important factor in this is to pay our homage, respect, and tribute to the soldiers, veterans, the Mukti Yoddhas, the people of Bangladesh who actually sacrificed a lot during this conflict for their independence, I would say, for the being liberated from the West Pakistani forces, military forces, basically. So that is to give the tribute to all these people who sacrificed a lot with their lives and suffered a lot to get this independence, I would say. Secondly, I think it's very important because it's 5 decades gone for us to try and educate and inform the new generations. 50 years is a long time. People tend to forget what has happened in the past. So to remind our people, especially the younger generation, both in Bangladesh and in India, that a lot of sacrifices are involved during this 1971 conflict for the liberation of Bangladesh or the birth of Bangladesh. Okay, so these are the main features of this Golden Jubilee or Swarnim Vijay Divas celebration. So that is the first thing. Second thing is, I would say that I did not participate in this war because I was still a cadet in National Defense Academy, and I had just completed my second term. There are 6 semesters, 6 terms, And then when this problem started in Bangladesh and became very acute, so I was still in NDA training to be an officer, especially in the Indian Air Force, but I was not qualified to participate. But my seniors, about 2 to 3 years seniors from NDA who passed out earlier, they had participated. Of course, they did very well in this conflict. So that is one thing. So whatever information I have, whatever I'm going to speak to you about this Indo-Pak 1971 conflict, and of course, birth of Bangladesh is based on the radio news, print media that existed that time, and of course, books written on this conflict, various campaigns, and of course, what I've heard from veterans who participated in this conflict. In addition, I rely a lot on the then Chief of the Air Staff, Air Chief Marshal P.C. Lal, Pratap Chandra Lal, who led the Indian Air Force during this conflict very ably. And he had written a book called My Years with the Indian Air Force. So that book covers a lot. Many of the chapters are devoted toward the Indo-Pak conflict of 1971. So I will heavily draw from those to comment on the various issues about the campaign, about the conduct, of the air campaign or the army campaign, naval campaign, the strategies that we followed, and overall campaign of 1971. So that is what I want to tell you very clearly. It is not original, it is not first-hand experience, but I have collected it over a period of time. So that is the second point either I'll tell you.
Right.
And now coming to the importance or the significance of this event, this conflict of 1971, there are many, many points that are very, very significant. It was one of the most I would say, important conflict in which a tremendous victory was achieved by the combined forces of Indian Armed Forces, and the Mukti Bahini, the Mukti Yodhas of Bangladesh, to actually defeat the Pakistani army and its armed forces in East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. So that campaign was a very swift campaign. It's called a lightning campaign. It started on 3rd of December 1971, and it ended on 16th of December with the surrender of Pakistani forces in Dhaka. And more than 93,000 prisoners of war had surrendered to the Indian forces.
Right.
So that's a great victory. After the Second World War, this is perhaps the biggest military victory in the military history of the world. So that is something very, very remarkable and significant. That is what we should remember. And secondly, geopolitical status of South Asia got changed totally with the creation of Bangladesh. So
Right.
it changed the entire geopolitics of South Asia, which is an important factor. And thirdly, I think, with the role of Mukti Bahini, I would like to emphasize importance and significance. Indian Armed Forces are very, very strong. There is no way the Pakistanis will win or be a match. It is only a question of time. How long should we take?
But
So
we
had
were
to-
outnumbered.
Yeah. So the main issue was how quickly can we liberate Bangladesh or defeat the Pakistani forces? Because if it got prolonged, then interventions would take place by the United Nations and their own friends. Even the US was very friendly to the Chinese, to the Pakistanis. China would help them. So interventions would take place and it would be very difficult to liberate Bangladesh. Okay, so that is another significant feature. And I think the Mukti Bahini or Mukti Yodhas played a very important role because they're the sons of the soil. They knew the terrain so well. They knew where the Pakistani armed forces were, and they would provide all the intelligence information that was very, very important for success of our military operations. And they were a guerrilla force. I think it was, some of them were trained by the Indian state as well. So they were very able guerrilla fighters. They kept on troubling them all the time. So the Pakistani army and the armed forces units were confined to the cantonments. They just couldn't venture out. So this actually demoralized them quite a bit. And the information available, the intelligence available to the Indian armed forces played a very important or significant role in completing a very quick campaign and winning this campaign. So these are
Right.
three important things I thought I'd mention to you. Yeah.
And one of the grounds on which India decided to intervene was also the inhumane treatment that was meted out by the Pakistani army. But
Yeah.
the contrast is here when finally General Niazi, signed the surrender,
Yeah.
and 93,000 troops were had surrendered to India. We gave them a very, very humane treatment until they were in our captivity.
Yes, yes. The if you go to the history of this problem, I think the main problem was with, of course, the mindset, the perception of superiority, better than the Bengalis in the
Right.
West Pakistanis. They felt they are not only physically stronger, but even ability-wise, they're much better than the Bengali population in East Bengal, or I would say East Pakistan then. So that superiority complex was the main result of the undoing. They became very, very discriminatory. They did not allow Bengali to be a state language, where more than, I think, about 60% of the population were Bengalis in East Pakistan, and they imposed Urdu on them. So that's how the Bhasha Andolan took place. The International Mother Language, Mother Tongue Day is being celebrated all over. The UN has accepted it. So that actually originated from Bangladesh, to my mind, East Pakistan then. So this discrimination itself, the sense of superiority, actually was the what undid their effort in uniting these two parts of East Pakistan and West Pakistan. Pakistan, I would say, because they are separated by 1,000 kilometers. They are nothing common in terms of language, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of culture, to my mind.
Right.
So now when the elections are held in I think 71 March, and under the able leadership of charismatic political leader Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the Awami League won the majority. Okay, more number of seats. They should have formed the government, Pakistani government, as per the constitution. But Bhutto and the army in West Pakistan did not allow this to happen. As a result, there was a kind of revolt, and they tried to suppress it with military might, military force, and the Razakars and other, associates of the West Pakistanis who were in, East Bengal or in East Pakistan, they suppressed them. They actually reigned in a terror regime wherein they killed people with violence in thousands, in lakhs, I would say, raped the women, burned their properties, and they became destitute in their own land. Millions of people streamed across the international borders between Indian states and Pakistan into, say, West Bengal and Tripura, Assam, and all the places. So it became a huge problem. So that was the undoing of the Pakistani state, to my mind. Very, very, unethical, very brutal force was used against the, Bengalis in East Pakistan, which actually resulted in the final revolt of the war, to my mind.
How prepared do you think India was at that time to go into this offensive?
You see, in 1971 March itself, when millions started pouring into Indian states for shelter, food, and safety, it was a very pathetic situation. Rains are about to come in because the monsoons would start in May. And with millions to be sheltered and fed, it was actually catastrophic situation for India in handling such a large number of refugees, as also economic burden on India. So India, I think, followed a policy of trying to convince the entire world it's time for the world to look at what's happening in East Pakistan, the repression that is going on, how people are being killed, raped, and brutalized, and the property is being burned. But the whole world, actually, to my mind, is almost silent. They observe the destruction of Bengalis in East Pakistan, remaining totally silent. But India couldn't do that because our stakes are much higher. We are going to suffer economically and our aim was to get them back. So how to get them back? If the world doesn't listen to us, if the Pakistanis, West Pakistanis don't listen to us, then I think only option was to go to war. So that's what made up our strategy and policy towards handling this crisis that was precipitated by the West Pakistani army and the political forces. So we were prepared in the sense we had time, though war could have started right then in March, April. But I think a good decision was taken that it should be delayed because we must give chance to diplomacy to solve the problem. And if that failed, then we could obviously have the last option, which we did exercise. And for that, a military campaign in the monsoon season in Bangladesh, which is riverine terrain, delta, Sundarbans, the biggest delta, it has huge rivers. And in the monsoon season, the span of Meghna, Padma, or Yamuna would be anywhere between 2 to 10 kilometers.
Right.
So, and it will be totally marshy, and it has so many tributaries and distributaries, too many rivers. So you'd get bogged down. The campaign would have landed up in a disaster, to my mind.
Right.
So we had enough time that we'll go in after due preparation, after due political process, due diplomatic process, convincing the entire world, and then if required, we'll go into the campaign. So this gave us time, the armed forces, to prepare themselves, make joint plans, joint training, and joint execution, which happened in December 1971. At the same time, most unique is that there is a clear political direction. It's very important. It is not only the three armed forces wings should be jointly fighting a war, joint is important, but equally important is the political will and political direction which was there. So as a result, there is no doubt at all that how we are going to fight this war and when. So that is a very important aspect. Militarily, I think we are much superior because Pakistan had two wings to defend, which is very difficult.
And, because of the topographical challenges that we had at that point of time, I think the role of the Air Force came in very, very important. So could you give us a glimpse into what the Air Force was like at that point of time?
Okay. No, instead of giving only about the Air Force, I think I'll give you the overall strategy or tactics in more detail about this campaign.
Sure, sir.
As I said, this had to be a lightning campaign and finish up the conflict in the shortest possible time before others could intervene. Though USSR was a very friendly country, we had signed a treaty of friendship, etc., which also involved military help. Right. And despite China and US being good friends of Pakistan, and they are almost ready to open up another front, like it happened, in towards the end of the war, Nixon, the President Nixon and his NSA or Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger. These two gentlemen, I'll not call them gentlemen, they are very, very vicious people. They are totally anti-India in all respect. And they had disdain for Indian leadership, Indian people, Indian culture, and they wanted to destroy India, actually. Okay. Right. Because we never towed their lines, right? From the beginning, when after the Second World War, we did not join their military alliances, be it CENTO, SEATO, etc., etc. Well, Pakistan joined. So they had a lot of interest in Pakistan, and they wanted that India's end should, India should end as a big power. So that is what resulted in terms of going into the war. That we had to finish the war very quickly. So the strategy for the army launched a three-prong attack. Wanted was that from the east, west, and from the north, three different corps would drive fast across the entire country of East Pakistan and try and capture Dhaka at the earliest. So in this tactics or strategy, their aim was to bypass wherever strongholds, forts that they held on the way. So Indian troops bypassed them and try to reach Dhaka as quickly as possible. But the main problem was, as I said, the riverine terrain, the big rivers. No army in the world has the bridging equipment to bridge so many huge rivers. Right. No army in the world. So that was out of question. So their lightning speed was being retarded by the riverine terrain and huge rivers to be to be breached. So that was one point. And that's where actually the Air Force came in. The Air Force and the Army worked together. The Corps Commander, the Eastern Air Command and Eastern Command of the Indian Army, they worked together and worked out a beautiful plan in terms of vertical envelopment. Vertical envelopment actually deals in using our helicopters, transport aircrafts, etc., to helilift troops across the river obstacles, or paradrop troops with equipment, weapons, and supplies, etc., across big rivers closer to the our target area, that is Dhaka. And that's what happened. You must have read about the Tangail air paradrop, very famous. And almost it took almost an hour to drop such a large number of paratroops with equipment and weapons, etc. And we used large number of transport aircraft like AN-12, Packets, Dakotas, and Avros, and the rest, whichever was available. And they all positioned actually in I would say West Bengal, be it Barakpur, be it Damdam, and many other places. So these aircraft are loaded with all these paratroopers and the equipment, and they went and dropped them, in the daytime, towards the later half of the day, over Tangail. And on the ground, people are waiting. Who are waiting? The Mukti Vahinis,
Right.
the Mukti Yodhas, to help them, quickly collect their equipment, weapons, etc. And and they could give them all the information about the enemy positions. So they could. This is how they actually cut off the troops which are trying to withdraw into Dhaka. So
Right.
fall of Dhaka became imminent because of this. Similarly, General Sagat Singh, who was the Corps Commander driving the forces from the north, along with Group Captain Chandan Singh in Jorhat, they made out a huge plan of heli-dropping their troops across the mighty Meghna. And they brought them very close to Dhaka, and I think on the 11th.
Right.
And that's how they sealed Dhaka from the Pakistani forces, who were bottled up into their fortresses and strongholds in various parts of that country, and they could not reinforce the forces in Dhaka. So Dhaka fell much faster because of this. This vertical envelopment was very important. So when you do this vertical envelopment, you require total air superiority. And how did this happen? So Indian Air Force, you must have heard about the Boira, air combat.
Yes.
Aerial duels.
Yes.
On 22nd November, this duel took place between Sabres of the Pakistani Air Force based in Dhaka, Tejgaon and Kurmitola, and the Indian fighter aircraft, famous NAT, which is called the Sabre Slayer. On 22nd, in the afternoon hours, it was noticed that several Sabres from Dhaka of the Pakistani Air Force has got airborne, and they're attacking our army post at Boira border repeatedly, our army troops with guns and rockets. This was detected by the radar at Jafarpur, ground control interception radar, surveillance radar, and they quickly scramble our fighters, that is our NATs, from Damdam to intercept them at Boira. When they reached there, they found that these aircraft were carrying out repeated attacks on our troops. Right. So they swooped down and immediately shot down 2 of their Sabres. These 2 pilots of the Pakistani Air Force, parachuted down, ejected from the aircraft, and they became POWs with us. And the 3rd aircraft actually was damaged very severely, and it was seen trying to fly away. And the pilot was able to control it, managed to control it and land it in Dhaka, but it was totally crippled. So that was the first victory. And the 3 Air Force officers who fought this battle and won a huge victory, they were given VRCs. Okay, Flight Lieutenant Don Lazarus, Flight Lieutenant Soros, and Flight Lieutenant Ganapati, a very, very famous gentleman of this Boira air duel. So that is one. And immediately after that, when the war started on 3rd of December, a few days, about 10 days before that, Yahya Khan, who was the president, and military junta leader, he had said that the problem in East Pakistan is because of India.
Right.
And they blamed India for everything. And they said, in 10 days' time, I'll be at war with India. And this was the end of November. And 3rd of December 1971, the Pakistani Air Force launched a huge air attack on the western borders, attacking about 9 airfields, starting from Srinagar, Avantipur, Ambala, Amritsar, Jodhpur, Jaisalmer, and I think Agra as well. So these bases were hit, and Indian Air Force was already prepared for it. And the reports came very fast. And within the next 3 days, there was no Air Force or Pakistani Air Force in East Pakistan. So because through air duels, most of the sabers are shot down, and repeated attacks on their ground positions or in Kurmigaon and Tejgaon and other air bases. These runways are cratered or aircraft are destroyed on ground, and no aircraft could actually get airborne, use this airport. So total air superiority was established. Hence, the Army and the Navy, the surface operations could go on at a rapid rate without any hindrance or interference by the Pakistani Air Force. That was a very important factor in this joint battle against the Pakistani forces. And this helped in the paradrop and heli lift, etc., without any interference from the Pakistani Air Force. Similarly, the Navy, without any interference from the Pakistani Air Force, they were very bold in blockading the entire Bay of Bengal coast of East Pakistan. All the ports were sealed. They carried out attacks on the river crafts and ships and the ports. So they couldn't actually even run away from there by sea, the Pakistani forces. They couldn't withdraw anywhere. So this is how the actual campaign took place. And finally, I must tell you about the air campaign. We had enough aircraft, may not be as good as the Pakistani Air Force in terms of firepower and capability. Like they had, certain aircraft which are slightly better than us, but doesn't matter. So what happened was on 14th morning, some intelligence was received by the Indian Air Force that the Governor General of East Pakistan was going to hold a very important meeting of the highest officials from the military and the administration in the governor's house in the afternoon. So this information was used by the Indian Air Force to launch MiG-21s and Hunter aircraft fighters with rockets and guns to attack the governor's house. And this attack was so accurate and so good that though nobody was really killed, I think some people may have been injured, but that accurate attack during the meeting, actually set a panic among the Pakistani administration and their Governor General. He immediately, he was shaking and he said, I am resigning. So he resigned and the army lost its morale. The Pakistani forces lost their morale. And this happened on 14th night. 15th was used for negotiations for the surrender, and 16th the surrender took place. So see the kind of role the Indian Air Force had played jointly with the Navy and the Army to complete this mission or this conflict in the shortest possible time.
Right. Thank you so much for giving us that elaborate picture of what had happened. And in your review, how do you think the India-Bangladesh ties have progressed in the last 50 years, and where do we stand as of now?
Well, I think Bangladesh has done exceptionally well as a nation. I think its constitution declares it as an Islamic nation, but they are secular in their approach. And the current government has done very well to contain, in terms of fundamentalist forces and punishing those who actually should have been tried for war crime by the world, not only Bangladesh itself. So to bring out some semblance of justice, the sufferings they had in the hands of the Pakistani forces. So as of now, I think Bangladesh is a resurgent country, economically developing very rapidly, And in all the indices of development, all the parameters of development, they're far ahead of their counterpart, Western counterpart, that is Pakistan. Now Pakistan, it was West Pakistan earlier. And in fact, in some of the indices, they're even better than India.
Correct.
So I think they are doing exceptionally well. And if they retain their focus on the economy and development and keeping away fundamentalism, I think that country will really do well. They've actually ushered in stability in the region, in this region, South Asia, and in as such, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and some of the other states as well. From time to time, there has been a lot of political instability or instability. And I think Bangladesh is one nation where there is political stability and the relationship has grown, the cooperation is good. We actually supplement and complement each other in developmental activities, be it trade, be it exchanges, etc., economic exchanges as well. So this has helped stabilize the situation in this part of the world. In South Asia, I would say, it's like a oasis in a desert. So because in terms of the security problems, in terms of the instability in the region, this region is very good because of Bangladesh's approach to peace and stability, approach to economic development. So I think our relations will only grow further, and as long as we work for economic development, no conflict, try and settle all the issues. There are a lot of issues between India and Pakistan, Bangladesh, be it land boundary, be it adverse position of I would say enclosures, etc. So those have been resolved to a large extent. There are certain issues like sharing of river water. A lot of agreements have been made, but still there are some issues which needs to be resolved. I think that can be done easily. It's taken quite long, almost 5 decades, to resolve many of the issues. Like LBA, Land Boundary Act, was passed. Adverse possession has been settled. Passage for our goods, etc., across Bangladesh to northeastern states. I think they've agreed to a certain extent, and more will come in the future. But give and take, and sense of cooperation and attitude of helping each other economically, trade-wise, people-to-people exchanges is only growing, and I'm sure it will be a beautiful example in the world that how we can live peacefully as neighbors. So I have great hope that these two countries, ethnically, culturally fond of each other and connected, civilizationally we are the same. So it's going to grow further, and it will be a beautiful example for the world to follow.
Sure. I was in fact hoping that you would. So can you share some personal anecdotes?
No, there is so much to cover. Right. So let me tell you something about my own experience. Since my ancestors are from East Bengal, undivided Bengal, and the Jessore district, my ancestor lived very, very close to Jessore and Khulna district border. And my parents studied in Calcutta. My father became a doctor after passing out from the Calcutta Medical College. My mother also studied in Calcutta because my grandfather, mother's side, was in Calcutta as a officer in the post office. And so we are very conversant with Bangladesh, I would say now. And we have attachment towards people of Bangladesh because we originally belonged to that place. So, and we migrated later on. I studied in Sainik School, Purulia. In 1965, September, when I was in the 6th standard in Sainik School, Purulia. Purulia is very close to Kalaikunda. Kalaikunda has had a lot of fighter aircraft operations. In 65, when the war broke out, in daytime, we would notice a lot of fighter aircraft activities, streaking through the sky, especially at low levels with a huge noise, or streaking across the sky at medium levels or high levels, many fighter aircraft. And later on, we came to know these are actually air battles that was going on with the Pakistani Air Force attacking our bases in, say, Kalaikunda, especially, Barakpur, Damdam, etc. So this was a very exciting event for us as a young student of 6th standard. And from then onwards, it was kind of a very, very enthusiasm that came into my mind that I should join the Indian Armed Forces, the Indian Air Force as such, as a fighter pilot. And that's how my determination grew to become a fighter pilot.
Right.
In NDA in 1970, I joined, and 1971 March, when this thing happened, we came to know about the clampdown by the Pakistani forces on the east, on Bengalis in East Pakistan. And we had a lot of relations there, a lot of people we knew, and the kind of atrocities they had perpetuated on them. So these people came across to India. And when I went home in 1971 June during the midterm break, I met many of my relations and people who were in Bangladesh or East Pakistan. The atrocities, when we heard about the incidents, it was shocking, and it left me very, heart-wrenching incidents. I went back to NDA with a very heavy heart, and I kept a close track of the incident that was taking place in East Pakistan. And of course, then on 3rd December, the war broke out. I was finishing my second term, I was going into third term. I'll give you an anecdote. During this time, the war started on 3rd of December, and 9th December was the passing out parade in NDA for the senior most course. And we are doing parades every day morning, rehearsals for the final POP parade, passing out parade. So suddenly during the rehearsal, it was just a few days before the passing out parade, the air raid siren went off, indicating the impending air raid. Pune was also one of the areas where Pakistani Canberras could reach to attack us. So within 30 seconds, everybody decamped from the parade square into the rooms, etc., pretending to take shelter from an impending air attack. Then after about 10 minutes, the all clear signal went off, but nobody returned to the parade square. Okay, so the parade was called off, and in the afternoon we had another parade. But we knew that the deputy commandant, who is a strict disciplinarian, is going to punish us for this act of ours. So we decided to do an excellent parade, very high standard of parade. And the deputy commandant was very happy with the standard of parade. And he actually pardoned us for the misdeed that we did in the morning. So that is one incident which is still stuck in my mind, etched in my mind. So either I'll mention to you that. But after I returned home, it was blackout in December. The war had started. We came by train, and we could observe, civil defense measures and blackouts all over. Sitting at home, I was trying to get the information on radio and newspapers, what was happening, glued to the TV and radio. There was no TV that time. So we heard about what was happening. We also heard about the US 7th Fleet aircraft carrier Enterprise sailing into the Bay of Bengal, which was being trailed by the Soviet forces. So it was a lot of excitement and eventful. And finally, when the surrender took place, it was a great joy for all of us. So that is my experience of the war personally, and including meeting people who had suffered at the hands of the Pakistani forces.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. I mean, it has been so enlightening and educational. It was so wonderful to listen to your own personal anecdotes. And I hope you can join us again and give us the honor of interviewing you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sharan. Hope to meet you again. All the best.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you so much, and have a good day ahead.
Thank you.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.